Hello friends, greetings of the day. We have already discussed about the personality, its types and traits. Just to revise a little bit, the various tools for assessment of personality which we have already discussed. These are objective, which is used in general education, projective, which is in clinical and psychological test using, and the third is subjective techniques, where interview and self-report test can be used. Today we will discuss the interview schedule. An interview is a face-to-face relationship between the two persons. It is essential condition is the rapport that exists among the interview and the interviewer. It is of various types like counseling interview, employment interview, research interview, marriage interview, etc. Interview stands classified with respect to its nature and purpose. Also on the type and qualification of the person who is interviewing. Here is the discussion. We are primarily concerned with the counseling interviews, and through it, of course, we can get her information about the individual also. Interview is a face-to-face or one-to-one situation in which the interviewer gathers information about the behavior problems and future plans of the people. It is also designed to assist the people to understand himself and his environment so as to enable to solve his problem or modify his plan. Let us discuss few definitions given by the various educationists. God's hat said a set of questions which are asked by an interviewer to fill in on the spot is face-to-face, two-face interaction with another person. Bogardus, he is another psychologist, a form of questions which the interviewer keeps with himself and filled it as he proceeds his inquiry. The third scholar is P.V. Young. It is a name applied to a set of questions which are asked and filled in by the investigator himself. From the above definition, we can conclude that it is a set of questions along with their answers asked and filled in by the interviewer in face-to-face interview meeting with interviewees. There are various types of interviews depending upon their purpose and design. When interview is used as a tool for gathering data for research purpose, it is called research interview. When interview is used for clinical purpose or to secure information about a pupil's problem, his past history, adjustment pattern, etc. It is called clinical interview. Similarly, interview can cover only one people at a time or a group of peoples. According to interview, can be individual interview or group in interview. Interviews is also classified as structured or unstructured interview. But our concern is to have a clear-cut look on interview schedule. Interview schedule is another procedure under self-reporting technique of individual data collection. In the interview, the individual is made to answer several questions put to him related to a specific aspects in a face-to-face situation. In conducting interview, the interviewer, the guidance personnel may use questions specified beforehand. This is called structured interview. If the interviewer does not have any pre-specified questions while conducting interview, it is called unstructured interview. Besides the above types, the interview may be counseling interview, diagnostic interviews, non-directive interview, authoritarian interview, and non-authoritarian interview. For guidance purpose, non-directive interview seems to be most useful and helpful. The counselor follows the student's needs, reflects and helps to clarify his feelings. He doesn't inject his own idea into the conversation by question or suggestions or by giving information or advice. We have some functions of the interview. According to Hull and Maclean, they have listed some functions of interview like to collect new information and amplify or interpret the information already gathered. Second, to permit counselee to think aloud in the presence of a sympathetic listener. Next is to carry necessary information to the counseling. To find socially acceptable and personally satisfying alternatives with and for counseling. Humphrey, Texler and North have beautifully given to use the functions of counselor in the interview, thereby highlighting the purpose of the interview. According to them, there are 5 functions of counselor. The first function is to establish a rapport with the counselee. The second is the function of counselor is to secure information about the counselee. The counselor's job is then to convey some information to the counselee. The counselor will then motivate the counselee. And lastly, the counselor is to help the counselee in his adjustment and along term planning. Now we will discuss the interview techniques. For a satisfactory interview, we are to prepare ourselves with all the vigors. We must see to it that physical conditions are all right. That is, there is perfect freedom from other interpretations, hassles, etc. Then we must follow the following techniques. There is no rigid approach. The fundamental techniques remains the same in all types. The first is to establish rapport by asking friendly questions. Interviewer must avoid evidences of fatigue, pressure, etc. The purpose of the interview to keep in view, or it should be mutually formulated earlier in the interview. Avoid a critical or commendatory attitude. Next is to help the individual to come to grip with his problem himself, do his own thinking and reach his own conclusion and his own feelings and behaviors. It is desired that before the interview comes to an end, the student must go satisfied with some plan of action in his hand. Let the student be assured that he can come again whenever it is necessary. Further, the silent points can be recorded. Another approach to the techniques is the 4-step approach. The major steps are preparation of the interview. This is one of the important components. This includes the establishment of the rapport, including the kinds of questions to be put, be asked, check up the physical conditions, unfolding the problems. And the next is the projective technique. This interview situation then compile the participant to unfold its problem. Let there be humor in the situation. No threat should be used. Working out of the problem. And then closing the interview. The counselee must go reassured. Now we should essentially know the precautions which needs to be taken while conducting an interview. While conducting interview, there must exist a perfect rapport between counselor and counselee. The ideal physical condition must exist, of course. The counselor must understand that his job is not disciplinary and that a client is not required to accept the counselor's services. Come to the point of interview as quickly as possible. Be natural and a good listener. Respect the personality of the counselee and end the interview with a constructive note. It is subjective in nature and as such, its findings have to be supplemented. We have some advantages and uses of interview. It is a natural, like day-to-day conversation and is flexible in nature. Interview can be practiced on literary adults. Interview yields better sample. Interview is more valid. Through interview, we can get a total view of the personality of an individual. It is a self-reporting technique which provides considerably flexibility to the interviewer. Then we have questions can be clarified if necessary. The interviewer can be given an opportunity to qualify or modify his answer, and the interviewer can carefully observe the individual during the session, noting down the feeling attached in his answer, the topic or cases when he seems to be envisaged, and areas on which he is most vocal. If the interviewer is experienced and trained, he can go beyond external purposes of the interview, and he understands his inner feelings, wishes, desires, likes and dislikes. While interviewing, the behavior of the subject can be observed, and information which regards to his emotional complex can be observed, which will be greatly helpful for individual guidance. It is a potent and indispensable tool for getting data that no other research tool can do. It can be adaptable, capable of being used with all types of individuals. Here are some components of conducting interview. Once the planning of an interview has done, it occurs 3 stages. Each stage has different purpose, which are as follows. The first stage is the opening stage. In this stage, we will find that the stage space with congenial atmosphere. This practice the interview taken person has to keep into consideration in advance, keeping the client focused and very comfortable. Explain the purpose of counseling and establish a rapport with easy questions, and start asking questions related to his problem as indirect questions. Directly we cannot ask, or we should not ask to the questions to the interviewer. Then we come to the main body. Here the core discussion starts. The discussion shall be based on the questions which has already been asked, and then the decision will be taken later on. Then move from simple to complex questions. Ask questions to the client related to his problems directly. Write and record each and every statement of the client. Otherwise, we will forget later on. So, on that moment, the interviewer has to write and record each and every statement which has been given by the client. And at the end, we can say that the closing part of the interview, the first is time management. One should not take a lot of time in asking the questions or listening. The time should be sufficient. Then the second is ending the counseling process slowly and gradually. And then at the last, formally we need to say a thanks and build a kind of rapport that interviewer will think that he can get some benefit of this counseling or interviewer process, and he can come once again for solving his problem. This all is in the process of interview techniques, and thanks for patience listening. Have a nice great day.